So I, no bullshit, just sat down and recorded my reaction to UFC Denver for the last 29 minutes. And the damn microphone, for whatever reason, didn't record the audio onto my camera. So, we're going to do it again. A little bit faster, but regardless. So first things, we're going to start off with that Devonte Smith fight. That was a fight with my buddy Austin. Told you guys that a lot of his fights have ended early. He has had a lot of first round knockouts, so keep an eye on him. And lo and behold, he put Julian Erosa to sleep early. Julian was moving in a little bit. He had his hands down. And Devonte Smith threw a 1-2, and Julian tried to kind of move out of it, but he hit that 1-2 right on him. Boom, put him to sleep early in that fight. And then another fight that we kind of predicted to end early was the Davi and not Ramos. His last name is Hamash. I would have never known that that was how it was pronounced. But regardless, he essentially backpacked Gunther for like 2 minutes in that round, and then he sunk in that rear naked, and Gunther wasn't even going to tap. Gunther just went to sleep. So 2 fights that we predicted they were going to be early exciting fights, and they were. Oh, so now on to something a little bit controversial with that Skelly versus Bobby Moffett fight. So in the first round, Skelly actually really dominated that. They threw a little bit in the beginning, but then Skelly ended up getting Moffett's back, and then he really just backpacked him for a large majority of that round. Didn't do a whole ton of damage, but nonetheless, he was still on his back, searching for submissions when possible, and just landing a few shots here and there. Now, in the second round, Bobby Moffett comes out and gets a takedown, and while Skelly's trying to transition to get on top position, Moffett locks in a Darce choke. So he gets that Darce choke locked in, and this is where it becomes a little bit weird because essentially Skelly is using his legs to try to run away from Moffett's body. So he's just, I think they did like a full circle around the cage, and so reason being is that Skelly wanted to keep his legs away from Moffett's legs so he couldn't use his legs to hook into Skelly's body, then allow that choke to have more leverage and to be tighter that would really finish that fight. So while he's trying to remain away and trying to remain relaxed, he kind of is laying over here like this. He's trying to create space, you know, between his neck and his arm. So he's laying here like this, and the ref comes over and grabs that left arm of his, of Skelly's, and he tugs on it. And Skelly doesn't give him a thumbs up. He doesn't, like, most of the time when they see that, they'll, like, grab his arm and they'll, like, resist to show that he's not asleep. Well, his arm looks limp when he tugs on it, and so the ref stops the fight right there. But as soon as he does that, it's clear as day that Skelly wasn't asleep. He was like, "What? Why'd you end that? I'm fine. I'm right here." But at that point, it was too late. The ref stopped the fight. Skelly didn't have any resistance on that arm, and so he thought his arm was limp. Called the fight. Now, they review the fight, and while he's sitting there talking, they're filming the ref. Skelly's trying to film. He's talking to Paul Felder kind of about what had happened in there, and from his perspective, you know, why... Well, I guess he was talking to Felder on his perspective of that fight and that submission. And so, lo and behold, the decision comes out, and they still decide that that's the end of the fight, and that Moffett's going to win. But the oddest part about that is that they label it a TKO. I'm not quite sure how or why. It wasn't just a submission, even though he technically, you know, never submitted and he wasn't out. He didn't offer resistance when the ref tugs on his arm. So apparently that's a TKO, which was kind of weird. But nonetheless, on to another fight. And this fight was also kind of controversial, but this was because of the decision. So the Yoder versus Cooper fight. So in the first round, Cooper controlled the cage the most of the time. She was the one in the center. She was the one moving forward, pressing Yoder up against the cage. She eventually got a takedown. In the last 30 seconds, Yoder transitioned and got on top from a dominant position, but a majority of that round was dominated by Cooper, or at least pushed by Cooper. So in the second round, Cooper is pushing Yoder up against the cage, but Yoder actually is the one that gets a takedown. Short-lived because Cooper ends up getting back to her feet. She gets a takedown of her own, and then she spends the last roughly minute and a half in a dominant position in that second round. So I also would have given the second round to Cooper. That's the first and second round I scored for Cooper personally. The third round was a little bit of a weird round in the sense that there was a lot more back and forth. So Cooper got a takedown about halfway through the round, but then Yoder reversed. But then it was a big transition game back and forth of just essentially switching who was in the dominant position, and then Yoder ends the fight with it looked pretty nasty. I mean, there was a potential for that fight to end. I think it was only like the last 10 or so seconds, but she had Cooper in a face crank. Doesn't tap, goes to a decision, and then Yoder wins that decision. So I think it was a close fight. I think it was back and forth, but all in all, I think Cooper was the one that controlled the cage and pushed the pace and was the one that had Yoder with her back to the cage a majority of the time. So I think you could have given Yoder that third round, but in my opinion, I think Cooper was the more dominant fighter in the first 2 rounds. But nonetheless, if you're watching this, for those of you, let me know if you have an opinion on how you thought that fight went, how you felt about the Skelly decision. I'd be really curious because I definitely was stopped too early, but let me know if you think that they should have made that a no contest or a draw or whatever it is that they could have done, since Skelly technically never tapped and he wasn't asleep. And then also similarly, let me know maybe if you saw the fight through a different lens of the Ashley Yoder versus Cooper fight. Let me know what you guys thought if you gave a certain round to Cooper or Yoder. Let me know, because I think the first 2 rounds went to Cooper and the last one went to Yoder, but Yoder won that fight. So let me know if I'm the only one that thinks that, or if you guys are aligned, or if you guys have different opinions on which rounds were given to which fighter. On to a fight that went away that I just did not see coming. So Luis Pena and Mike Trizano. So Luis Pena looked really good on The Ultimate Fighter, and if you watch some of his fights before he got onto The Ultimate Fighter, his striking just looks impeccable. I mean, it's 6'3" for 155. He pretty much picks the shot and lands it whenever he wants, but that just wasn't the case. Even though he was the longer fighter, that entire fight, he just couldn't find the right range. I mean, early in the first round, he really overextended on a few shots. Threw a jab, threw a right hand, and it was just really far off. It just did not look good. And then on top of that, Trizano was the one that was landing. His jab was there for almost the majority of the fight. He had a few good right hands. And early in that fight, he landed some really hard leg kicks on Luis Pena, and he continued throughout the rest of the fight. I think the total, he probably threw 15, 16 total leg kicks on that leg of Luis Pena, and a lot of them were thrown early in the first and second round, and it took a toll because it eventually got to the point where Luis was attempting some really poor takedown attempts. I mean, he really telegraphed it. They were super far away. He didn't try to close the distance, didn't try to disguise it with shots at first. He just had some really sloppy takedown attempts. Eventually, he got a couple that were a little bit better. He better disguised them with throwing a jab or a right, or throwing a kick, and then to close the distance first, or to get Trizano to move into a different way that allowed him to throw a shot. But all in all, I expected Luis to pick him apart on the feet. He's looked so good in every fight that he's been in the past when he's standing up, that I did not see Trizano being able to get the better of those two, especially with the reach advantage that Pena has. That being said, I just think it was that. I think it was a culmination of Pena he just wasn't on that night. He just couldn't find his right range. So that probably threw him off. And then the fact that Trizano was landing and really tearing up that lead leg of his just probably got to him. He had some sloppy takedown attempts, and then the fight just didn't go his way. So props to Trizano. I think, I still think Pena is a skilled fighter. I think Pena could have won that fight, just wasn't his night. So we'll see what happens to be next for these two guys. I'm not quite sure. I don't know what you guys thought. The 30-27 seems a little bit out there. The split decision, I did not think that there was... I don't think Trizano dominated him for all 3 of those rounds, but if you do, hey, let me know, and let me know why. Leave a comment. Seriously, I'm dead serious. I want to get some other people's perspectives on this of how they thought those rounds were scored. So from someone that I thought was going to perform well, it didn't, to someone that really showed up big, and that was Maycee Barber. In her fight, she was playing no game. She came out in the first round. They struck around a little bit. They exchanged some punches. Barber was getting the better of her. She got her up against the cage, and that's where she really started to shine, is up close in the clinch. She landed some good elbows, some good punches. Easily took that first round. In the second round, she really wasn't playing any games. She came out early, closed the distance, got a takedown, and had some of the nastiest ground and pound I have ever seen from any female fighter in any weight class, let alone 115. She got her down, and she was landing big shots, big punches, big elbows. She had her cut open and bleeding. She wanted that fight to end, and that's exactly what happened, man. She takes it by TKO in the second round. Props to her. She looked really good. I foresee that they're definitely going to give her, ranked opponent. I'm guessing someone in the top 10. And then we'll see just how long it takes her to work her way up those straw weight rankings, if she can manage to have a similar performance against a ranked fighter than what she did on Saturday. So, someone else that, so I was terribly off on this one with Dariush and Moises. Dariush hasn't impressed me in his last couple of fights, and in all honesty, I forgot that he had even fought twice since the Edson Barboza fight, which makes sense considering Barboza's fought twice since then. But regardless, Dariush has had two tough losses in his last 3 fights. One of them was a draw, and the other 2 were losses, and I believe they were knockout and TKO losses. So, looking at Moises' track record coming into this, I thought that it was just going to be that they were setting him up to be the guy that was working his way up that division in Dariush, and Moises was going to come in, crack him, and then they were going to make another setup for Moises. But far from the case. Dariush controlled that entire fight. Now, Moises did land a couple of good shots. He did have a good right hand and a good uppercut in that first round while Dariush was trying to close the distance. But once Dariush closed the distance, it was his fight. He backpacked him. He was just stuck on his back. And then eventually, in the second round, he was in a takedown. The only thing that Moises had going for him, he had a good right hand, a good uppercut early in the first. When Dariush shot in and got a takedown, he had a very tight guillotine. But the thing about a guillotine is it's usually at its tightest right before your head pops out. And each time, Dariush just popped his head right out of it and then was in a super dominant position for the remainder of that fight. He really wasn't ever in any danger. And he takes that fight handedly with 2 30-25s and a 30-26. So props to Dariush for making me eat my words. I was terribly off on that fight. Dariush looked really good, and so we'll see who he manages to get now in the lightweight division. So next we have Raquel Pennington versus Germaine and Randamie. And this fight went a little bit different than I anticipated, in the sense that I thought Randamie was going to come out, land a big shot, and put Rocky out early, first, second round. But now I think I understand what Rocky's game plan was, and I think it makes a little bit of sense. So she missed weight. I think she was over by 2 pounds. No, she weighed at 38, right? 138. I think she was 139. She came out with a t-shirt and shorts on. I don't know why. If you know you're over, I don't know why you'd wear the clothes. But regardless, she came in heavy. And I think the goal was to come in heavy. I don't think she obviously wanted to miss weight, but I think the goal was to come in heavy. She looked way heavier to me inside that octagon. She didn't look super fit like she typically does. I think the goal of that was she didn't want to stand and bang with the Randamie because she knew she wasn't going to win that exchange, especially after the fight with Nunes. She did not want to get beat up the way that she did against Nunes, and so I think what her plan was to get in close, cut off the distance, and potentially get to take the Randamie down, and at least be in the clinch and hopefully take her down, and that additional weight should allow her to have that weight to hold her against the cage, or when she gets her down, to stop the Randamie from getting back up. So I think that was the reason behind it. I could be wrong. Maybe somewhere wrong with her weight cut and I'm just terribly off. But I think I think that feeds into her game plan, right? It helps, like Mackenzie Dern against Amanda Cooper, when you're a little bit heavier and you're grappling, you can hold someone down. It's a lot harder for them to get back up. And a lot of the fight was spent with Rocky trying to push her up against the cage and hold her there, but she didn't really do anything, in my opinion. Like, yeah, she was kind of pushing the pace and standing in the middle of the octagon a majority of the time, but when she got her against the cage, it was Randamie that was the one that was landing the shots, whether it was knees or punches to the body or like the dirty boxing close-range punches. And Randamie landed a few good 1-2s, a couple good right hands, and Rocky wanted nothing to do with that. As soon as that happened, you could tell that she would push her back up against the cage. Essentially, Rocky had the plan of dominating the ground, I think, or dominating the fight via grappling and takedowns, but she never really got there, and she never was really in a dominant position. She didn't really land any good shots, and so Randamie takes that one. And then we're on to the Cowboy fight. And I was just happy watching Cowboy come out for this fight, man. You see Cowboy come out walking down towards the cage, and he sees his son in those cowboy boots, and he just kisses his son on the way to the octagon. It has nothing to do with his actual... I mean, this has nothing to do with his fight performance. I mean, it's tied into everything, but I just really like Cowboy. It's hard to dislike Cowboy, and so even when Cowboy's at a disadvantage of fighting in a weight class where he doesn't really want to fight at, he would rather fight at 155 and fighting a guy like Mike Perry that's super dangerous on the feet. And then you have all this drama that went on with he and Winklejohn at the gym for siding with Perry. But nonetheless, he comes out, throw a few strikes, they get in a clinch, they're kind of exchanging knees back and forth, and Perry goes for a takedown, which was kind of strange. Not quite sure why. Maybe Perry was like, yeah, I'm going to show you that, I'm the better grappler. But it didn't work out that way. Cowboy transition, gets into side control, eventually takes his back. Now he's riding a little bit too high once he takes his back, and Perry gets to slip him off, and then ultimately that was the downfall. I mean, who knows what would have happened, but Perry slips him off of his back, but then from there it's just Cerrone moving his legs up, trying to work towards a submission, whether that's a triangle or an armbar, and lo and behold, he does get a hold of Mike Perry, sinks in that armbar. You see that face whenever he gets it locked in. You know that one's about to be a submission. He looks back at the camera and he looks angry when he's cranking on that arm. Allegedly broke Mike Perry's arm, so yeah, that sucks for Perry. If his arm truly is broken, it'll be a while till he can get back in there. But props to Cowboy for winning that fight. Always love to see Cowboy win, man. Such a cool dude, such a nice guy, great fighter. Doesn't really talk all that shit. Fights a ton of times throughout the year. So love to see Cowboy in there. As soon as he finishes that fight, he goes over to the cage, not talking shit to Winklejohn, anything like that. I'm pretty sure this is what he says, but I think he goes over there and he goes, hey, bring me my baby. His wife brings his baby. He has his wife, his baby, his grandma in the cage. Props to Cowboy. Congratulations on a big win. And he solidifies the most UFC wins and the most UFC finishes in his home state of Colorado in front of his brand new baby boy. So congrats to Donald Cerrone. What a big win. Filled my heart. I was so happy to see Cowboy win that fight. And then from there, I mean, that feeling of euphoria just carried over into one of the best fights of the year, in my opinion, with Chan Sung Jung and Yair Rodriguez. The Korean Zombie lives up to that name. My gosh, in that fight, there was a lot of back and forth, and early in that round, Yair threw a couple really hard outside leg kicks, and later on at the end of that fight, it seems as he broke his foot throwing one of those outside leg kicks to the outside of the Korean Zombie's knee. He broke his foot in throwing those. And so, in that fight, it was really back and forth. And in my opinion, I think Yair probably took those first 2 rounds. I think he was getting more of the clean shots and landing better in the exchanges. And he actually, you can see, he bloodied up the Korean Zombie's lip pretty early in there. But what the Korean Zombie did, that I think actually did him really well in that fight and allowed him to win those last, well, the 3rd, 4th, and he was winning the 5th, in my opinion, was he stopped standing with that lead leg out so far and kind of squared off. He squared his shoulders off, so he was standing square to Yair. And so what that allowed him to do is anytime Yair was going to get in close to throw one of his kicks at either his leg or his body, he was squared up enough to the point that he wasn't going to throw a kick back at Yair. He was throwing punches. So if Yair was moving in to throw a body kick, throw a leg kick, he could hit him with a jab, or he could come across even with a right hand within that distance and tag up Yair. And so that's what he actually did. I think the Korean Zombie landed more strikes And a lot of them were because of his punches just were a lot crisper. His jab looked really good, and he was using his range effectively to be able to land that good right hand against Yair. And so as that fight progresses, just a really awesome back and forth fight. I think Yair took potentially the first 2 rounds. The Korean Zombie, in my opinion, was definitely winning those last 3 rounds. And then with like 10 to 12 seconds left towards the end of the fight, they both had their hands up. They're both like, you know, what a hell of a fight we both just went through. And then they decided to do one last exchange. And unfortunately for the Korean Zombie, he kind of overextends and charges a little bit. And so what I thought had happened in the beginning was I thought the Yair kind of duck rolled and then came up. And I thought he unintentionally headbutted the Korean Zombie. And that's what put him down. And so at the end of this fight, I'm trying to figure out, wait, was that a headbutt? Was it before the end of the round? Is it still a knockout if it's an unintentional headbutt? Like, will it be a no contest? And so, lo and behold, they show a few more replays, and Yair actually ducks under and throws up that back elbow and catches him square on the head, man. He put him out cold in 4 minutes and 59 seconds into the 5th round. That is just insane. And that's not even, I mean, that's the biggest elbow he threw of the night. But I think it was in the 1st or 2nd round. It was super early in that fight where the Korean Zombie was moving in closer again. He threw a spinning back elbow and caught the Korean Zombie dead on the forehead. I mean, it looked nasty whenever he hit him with that. And the Korean Zombie didn't even like back up. I don't even think he blinked. I think he just kept moving forward. It was insane. Definitely living up to his nickname. So props to him. I kind of felt bad that you know, that fight that he poured so much of his heart into those last couple rounds, you know, and just to get finished in that last second. But hey, man, that's the fight game. If you're not on it, also, I mean, that's what happened to Alexander Volkov with Derek Lewis. Except this one was even more last second. 5th and final round. 1 second left. Yair lands a crazy back elbow. For the win. And so, all in all, I think UFC Denver, the 25th anniversary card, was one of the best free cards I've watched in a long time. A couple of controversies, a couple of really good fights. All in all, a great showing, a great card. Let me know what you thought of this fight card. Let me know what your favorite fight was on this card. It was a great card. Hope you enjoyed me solo stashing for the day. My boys, they went out last night, had a little bit of fun. So just for the sake of time, I wanted to record this one myself, and I got to record it twice. So hope you guys enjoyed it. If you do, follow along. I have some more UFC videos coming out week by week. So thanks so much for watching, guys, and we'll see you in the next one.